Welcome to the Perspectives Podcast. This is Josue. As most of you guys probably already know, I'm a fellow believer. I'm a Christian, as people like to say. I am from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I attended the Oral Roberts University. Shout out to ORU. Shout out to my student loans. And we have Mr. Chase Brown here with us. He's a fellow native Texan. He's an aspiring philanthropic creative. He likes very long walks on the beach. Why, I have no idea. Chase, how you doing, man? It's been a while.
Yeah, we had a good break.
Yeah.
After our 1 year celebration.
Wow.
Kicking off year two here in a special fashion.
Wow.
But yeah, man, things have been good. Excited to see what this next year has in store. And yeah, man, got revitalized a little bit after being up in Tulsa this weekend, seeing your boys.
Yeah, seemed like a good time.
Seeing our boy Montel Fish.
Yeah.
And catching up with him. So how about you, man?
I'm good, man. So, as Christians like to say, I like giving Christians a hard time. I'm a Christian myself. I'm in a new season in life right now. And
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of different things happening. Just trying to work it all out and figure out a pace. But enough about us. As you guys already know, whenever we bring on these podcasts, we always have special guests. And today we have on the very fashionable, the always, what's the word? He always provides gifts to the kids. Mr. Santa Claus, as I like to call him.
Yeah.
My man, Alex, bro, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but that's my guy, Alex. Well, let me clap.
Thank you. It's Lee, Lee.
That was a joke.
But I mean, it's okay because there's various spellings to Lee.
There
So
is. One of my friends is L-I-S.
L-I-S.
Yeah.
And that's pronounced Lee.
I think so.
L-I-S.
Let's go with that.
I guess hope so, since you brought it up.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's hope it is.
So. We'll edit that part in case he's listening. Man, how are you doing?
Dude, I am grateful. I am blessed. I am ecstatic right now to be here in the amongst of two legends.
Jeez.
And so I really hope that I could bless this podcast somewhat and that the ears that hear it will be multiplied by 10.
Wow.
So in the name of Jesus Christ,
Talk about it.
I declare that there'd be prosperity over this. Wow. Okay, I'm just kidding, guys. But no, for real, though, I hope that there'll be a lot of people that have been anticipating the next episode. So I'm glad to be here, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And we're excited to have you.
Yeah.
It's been something where you and Josue have known each other for
How long's
a little
been?
bit.
Dude, it has
More
to be
than 2 years.
Yeah, it's over 2 years now.
Yeah.
2 years now.
And then you and I met at Butterman's birthday a few months ago.
A few months ago.
Yes,
I heard
sir.
it was a legendary birthday. I don't remember.
That was epic.
It was epic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Good game
it was
night.
a talk of the
Good
year.
food. Yeah. And so, yeah, definitely there. Like you and me got to connect, got to know each other. And
Finally, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to for, I don't know, since I seen you two guys together. I was like, man, this is a man I have to meet. And you know what? God provided a way. Thank God for your birthday. So thank you for definitely connecting with me that night. It was awesome.
Yeah. And so kind of through that conversation, me and Josue were both just kind of like, you have a very unique perspective on a lot of things. Some of the topics that we'll get into tonight, some topics that we won't. And so it's special to have you here, special to be able to have the listeners hear from you and also just us just hang out, have a conversation. Yeah. And so kind of for the people to get to know, you wanted to share your story a little bit, just kind of an introduction about you and that.
Yeah. So I don't know what kind of story you want me to share as far as just growing up. I guess this is kind of like the testimonial.
Yeah,
I guess.
there you go.
Story.
Much,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So my story is that I grew up in a Korean household. Both my parents are from South Korea, and I grew up in a Christian home as well. My parents were attending. It was called Hanudi Korean Baptist Church. Okay. So I was born into the church and grew up my whole life going to church. And so what really clashed together with the Korean culture and also a Korean church that's Baptist was a very legalistic rule. So I grew up, of course, my parents always wanted the best for me, and they made sure that I stayed out of trouble. So really just like, my thought process was, hey, like, be a good son, stay out of trouble. And so my parents, they loved on me a lot, just the best that they could. just migrating here to this country and literally giving up everything. So they always wanted to provide the best life for me, and I'm very grateful for that. I am the only child, so obviously a lot of blessings flowed. Thank you, Mom and Dad.
I can imagine.
And so it was great. Grew up in a very middle class family, and as I went on through the schooling system, I grew up actually learning Korean first, and after that, when I got into preschool, that's when English was the language that I started to learn and develop in. Obviously, my parents, they found an importance of keeping the native language, so they would send me over to Korean school during the summer. There was a church out there in Dallas that would provide these schools, so I learned and kept the language in my tongue, and after that, there would be also just like Korean comedy shows and whatnot that I would watch and just like learn the words from there.
Right.
And then eventually during the summer in my late elementary and middle school years, I would be going to Korea to spend the summer with my uncle and aunt and cousins.
Nice.
And just really just immerse myself in the culture. So, I love just being able to like go there and like literally just be placed in a situation where you have to like know the language. So I'm very grateful for the fact that my parents found the importance of making sure that, I knew how to speak Korean, how to write Korean, how to, read Korean. So I'm very grateful for that. Obviously, if you're very familiar with the Asian culture, very proper, very respectful, very successful. My parents obviously wanted me to follow all those criteria. So they either wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer, explore those fields. And that, Korean mindset was brought over here to America. So, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be growing up. Had a very huge imagination, wanted to be a lot of things. And so, as I progressed on into high school and started thinking about where I'd go to college, I had a few choices. And growing up in the church, I was also a worship leader for the youth. And then also,
I did not know this. You can't be serious.
So you can't make this stuff up.
Wow.
So I was a worship leader, and then after that, that's kind of like when I really wanted to have a tug towards ministry. And so as I applied to schools, the first school that I got accepted to was UT Austin. And then after that, I ventured off into some Christian colleges. So Belmont University, Biola, and then Wheaton. Just looked at some of these other options. And so really my heart and desire was to actually go to Biola out of all the other universities I got accepted to. So I let UT Austin know that I'd be declining my admission there. And then I was gung-ho for Biola, visited. This was 08, 09 recession time. So during this time, my dad was let go of his job. And we were thinking that financially that the university would, work something out towards making it more affordable for us. That was not the case. And then afterwards, I started looking around into other options. So I applied to NCTC, UNT, and got into both immediately. So I accepted UNT, and that's where I really had a heart to like just pursue and help people out. So I wanted to study psychology. And so that's where I went for 4 years, go mean green. No student loan debt. So
Didn't you go to UNT?
I did go to UNT.
I think I added that.
We knew like very little bit, I guess, of each other because we'd see each other at the rec.
Oh, really?
But it wasn't really anything where like we talked at all. Like just a face that you noticed, things like that. And so then at your birthday was the first time we talked.
You guys were the Flying Eagles, right?
No, we're the mean green Eagles. So.
I think we're the Flying Eagles. Yeah,
but
we're the Golden Eagles.
I mean,
actually.
I think eagles do fly. I hope that our eagles fly too. So
speaking of eagles, continue. I'll get back to it. Continue.
So went to UNT 4 years. Man, I don't know how deep we want to go into the experience of my years in college, but let's just say that I took the prodigal son route and joined a fraternity and that's when I was introduced to a completely different world.
Yeah.
Obviously, with all the stories of which I explained to you growing up in a Korean and Baptist church, I was very sheltered. So this was the first time ever, like, I, was able to say, like, hey, I don't have to tell my mom, I need to be home at this time and I'll be there. It's like, hey, I can stay out as late as I want. I can do whatever the heck I want.
Sure can.
And, the consequences be on me, right? So, yeah, went through college just like having the time of my life.
Yeah.
And then, bam, after I graduated, that's when, I had to take things a little bit more seriously. So, this is what I really was confused about because, you're growing up being told, hey, like, this is what you need to do, A, B, or C to get into, a successful life. So, like, I was told, hey, you go to college, you graduate, you get a job, you're going to be successful, you're going to be able to have a family, and everything's going to be golden. So I was anticipating that once I graduated. I was like, yo, I graduated, I got my degree.
You were sold that dream too, huh?
Yep, I was sold that dream. I think it's called the American dream.
I think so too.
Something like that.
Yeah. I think it's still floating around.
It is for sure.
But so yeah, the American dream I found was a false promise. I thought that I would be getting a bunch of calls from all these organizations and companies to say, hey, we want you, we'll pay you. And so that didn't work out. I actually landed a career in market researching right after I graduated. And funny enough, they actually needed my language capabilities because we're doing all these projects in the airport where I'd be speaking to Koreans. So that was fortunate. I love the job. For that story, my manager who hired me on, like, there's a completely different story we can go on that. But just to direct you back on path, and this is kind of appropriate to the conversation that we'll be having. But I decided, hey, like, I love this job, but my parents are telling me otherwise. Like, this is not going to sustain a future for you. So why don't you go back to school and get a master's degree and see if that's something else that you want to do aside from doing this job for the rest of your life. So that's when I applied to UNT again for my criminal justice. To do a master's in criminal justice. And so I took a flip-flop. I went from psychology to criminal justice. And the reason being for that was because part of my story and testimony, when I was having a little bit fun too much, I did get in trouble with the law, DWI. So that kind of story was very hard. It was very hard. One of the most toughest seasons of my life. And so going through the whole probation system, I mean, I can go off on that and, tell you how much I can understand people who go through that kind of experience. But during that time, actually, a very famous case took place in New York. If you're familiar with the Eric Gardner case, the man that said, I can't breathe. That's when I saw just the injustice of, just police brutality going on. And at that time, because of me being in trouble with the law and also seeing the law being corrupt, that's when I decided, hey, I want to take this into my own hands. I want to study law. I want to change the criminal justice system because it's so corrupt. So once I got in, I also got accepted into a law firm as an assistant. And so this was awesome. Like, God, like, this is the best scenario ever. Like, I'm studying law, I'm working for a law firm. And after that, I took quite a bit of a curveball. So the timing wasn't right. Everything that was, developing with my, with my case for my DWI just escalated and it got worse and worse and worse. And so, that curveball led me to drop out and not pursue law, as well as also leave the law firm. And that's when I was a little bit confused because I was like, God, like, I thought this is the direction that you were calling me towards. And I realized that this wasn't. And I don't know if on the record I could tell you about this, but I'll just tell you this. There's a lot of corruption that goes on, a lot of corruption, even if you're working for a law firm. So I would just say that I was not excited to know that you would have to do a lot of corrupt things in a position where you're supposed to uphold the law.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's when I noticed, like, hey, I can't do this. Like, I'm not going to go study law and then after that work for a law firm, do things that I don't morally agree with, and then after that, to work my ways through getting my own personal like law firm. So, so that definitely confused me and left me in a very deep hole for a while. Probation was very tough, and I'll tell you this: the place where I actually was in probation under, Denton County. One of the things that I was very shocked by was just the success rate of leaving probation. So, getting out of it. It's 20%. So 80% of people are still in probation. They're still caught in the cycle of
The recidivism is crazy. Yeah.
I was shocked. And that's when I was just like thinking like, wow, like, are people really that bad, or like, are they really just that stupid? They just want to continue to live the life that they want to do. Like, they don't have a revelation like, wow, I should stop doing this.
Yeah.
So I was very grateful for that when I went through the whole program. I was even under SOP, which is supportive outpatient. So that's when probation gets a little bit more intense. And so like I seen it and, experienced it all. So I know what it's like to be caught under that system, and I see the flaws in it. At the end of the day, it's all about your money. They just want your money because you're paying for, meeting with your probation officer. You're paying for these drug tests. You're paying for these classes. There's a lot of money involved. The court fees, of course, after it's been, finalized. So I really realized that there's a flawed system and there's a better way that could be done. But I digress, going back into my story. So kind of just like leading up within the next 3 years, I'm just kind of like, Lord, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I just kind of like take these odd jobs while being, under probation and trying to hope for like something better after I'm done with it. And then there was actually even a season in my life, as I took all these odd jobs, I was actually jobless. And this is kind of when I'll tell you the story of my manager. I told you back in my market researching company, she was part of the Rotary Club. And in the Rotary Club, every Tuesday we have lunch and we bring a guest speaker. And the guest speaker that day was a gentleman named Fred Sorrells. He runs a ministry called Operation Go Quickly, where he seeks out to go quickly and help out the lame, the disabled. So his work is now involved with the Haitian amputee soccer team.
Wow.
And so, his response was actually starting from the earthquake that happened in 2010. And then God kind of led him to where he is now. And now he's actually going all around the world, like starting amputee soccer teams, like building the connections first and then like expanding it, because he really wants to be intentional about like who takes leadership in these countries, and making sure that, it's healthy, it's organic, and it's also like not corrupt. So we really want to build Christian leaders in these places to really just be, to honor what God's doing with Operation Go Quickly. So, so he was speaking, and at that time, I was just very intrigued. I just came back from a psychology placement program in Sri Lanka, and there
we go.
So that's another story. So that's when I really saw just like how just like underdeveloped the country is, as far as just like taking care of their patients. Because of their Buddhist beliefs, they don't believe in psychological treatment. They just believe in heavy medication, which is sad. So I've seen a lot of patients literally like zombies, and not being able to take care of themselves. And every time they start yelling or screaming, having an outbreak, which they could be communicating, hey, I'm hurting, hey, I'm hungry, hey, this or that. The doctors come and they just sedate them, and then they're just laying on their beds for like the entire day. Wow. So that's when I said, hey, like, we need people who care about people and to go help them out. And this was the man that came and shared his story about that. So he said, hey, we're getting these hearing aids and we're collecting your donated hearing aids, and we're going to refurbish them right here because my friend, Dr. Kurt Chappell, he's going to refurbish them, and then we're going to fit them on these deaf people here in Haiti, and they're going to be able to listen 100%. So I was just like, wow, who are you? Like, how come I've never met you before? So I went up to him and talked with him, And at the time, he was working on a documentary, which is still in the process. It's called The Pursuit of Hope. And it just highlights the story of what happened from the earthquake and what's going on now. And the stories are just incredible. So I got to travel with him 2017, took the Haitian amputee soccer team from like Texas all the way to California, to Tennessee, Arkansas, Indiana. And yeah, just got to just witness God working through these Haitians that are restoring hope to, especially like we want to intentionally visit like the VA hospitals because, 22 a day. And so we really want to restore that hope for them and be like, hey, it's not that bad, especially when you see the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere come here. And these guys, I mean, some of them are former like soccer players. So like a lot of them are very, very, very talented. Like even with one leg, like don't underestimate these guys. Better than me. So yeah, I was very just like, just passionate about like helping these people out. But then that also came a time where I was like, Lord, I can't be working for free for the rest of my life, And then this is where things started to transition, where in 2018, I'm still looking and I'm just like, what's going on. Also was part of a young adult ministry called Initiative, where that's where I met Josue. And because of that, so when I first joined, I was class 3. I just absolutely loved it. I was gung-ho about it. This was a time actually during my probation. I'm sorry if I'm scattered. I feel like I should just like put all these together.
Keep going, because there's a lot of things that we can go off of here when you're done. So it's great.
So Initiative. So let me tell you this. So this is a testimony. So I remember during this time when I was down to my last 4 friends that I thought were like, the friends that I needed to run with during this time of probation. They were still partaking in activities that I couldn't do, right? So I just remember, man, I'm just be straight up blunt, like they were in the living room, ready to spark it up, hit the bong. And I'm just like, God, I wish I could have some friends that didn't have to partake in these activities in order to have a good time. And I just remember I was in my friend's kitchen. I was like, Lord, I just pray that you would introduce me into a group of friends that just love you and we have a good time because we love you. So I kid you not. So Grant Skeldon, who I actually grew up in high school with.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we went to school together.
Yeah.
He actually texted me immediately after that prayer, which I'd never had happen. So I was just like, what's this, Lord? He's like, hey, so I'm starting Initiative Class 3. Do you want to join? And I was like, yeah, but I don't think you want me. Because I'm thinking this is for Christians. I'm like, I can't say I'm a Christian right now, but whatever. So anyhow, he's like, don't worry about it. And graciously, he took me in, joined the class, loved it, was the best thing ever that happened to me. And after just seeing such a diverse group of Christians coming together that are about Christ-loving, city-changing, church investing, disciple-making local missionaries, I was like, this is what I want to be a part of.
Yeah.
So the next class, I was actually invited to be the blue team leader. And so I did that, loved it. And after that, the next class coming in, I was like, I think, God, I need to move in a different direction. So as I was job searching, I remember my cousin had passed away, and I was in Houston at the time helping out with the Haitian. There's a soccer tournament with the Haitians, with the English amputee soccer team and the USA soccer team. So I was down there helping out, doing the photos and doing journaling. And then after that, I got the news that my cousin passed away, so I had to go back to Dallas.
Yeah.
And one of my other cousins, she owns a restaurant, so she was asking at the time, like, what are you doing for employment? Told her right now, nothing, just looking around. And so she invited me to work at her restaurant as a bartender / waiter. So I took the offer, and God, he has a funny way of doing things. But, I just thought initially like, hey, bartending, like she's like, you can make $1,000 a weekend. So like, I was like, I might just grind this out for, X amount of time. And after that, see what the next thing is. Well, This is when I started my first day. And then Grant Skeldon, out of the blue, calls me on my first day and says, hey, what are you doing for work? And I was like, I just started this bartending gig, just like gonna make some money and see where it goes. And he's like, hey, hold on a sec. Like, there's this thing called Together 2018 that's gonna happen at the Texas Motor Speedway. I really, really recommend you that you look into this. And so I want you to send me your resume and we'll go for it from there. So I was like, Lord, what are you doing
There
to
we
me?
go.
This is unexpected, another curveball right now. So that's when I applied and, sent my resume over. And I was excited because I was like, this is also a season of my life where I really just want to do ministry. And so I said, Lord, no matter what happens from these interviews that I have, like, even if I don't end up landing this position, God, I want to give you all the glory that you deserve. And that's when he brought this peace over me saying, son, I'm going to take care of you. Just watch me. And I went through the whole interview process, and every time I said, hey, guys, I'm just super grateful. Like, even if this doesn't happen for me, like, this doesn't work out, like, I still want to be a part of this and help you guys. So God just graciously took me through the process and allowed me to land the position as church relations associate.
There we go.
And that's when I was just like going at it for 3 months, because that's when it happened in July when I landed the position. So I started July 11th, and I remember we were at the Texas Motor Speedway just casting the vision of seeing what it was going to look like. And so building church relationships, got to visit a lot of amazing churches here in Dallas. Realized how many churches there are in Dallas too.
Yeah. I would know, right?
Yeah, 4,800 is
Really?
the number. Yeah,
Wow.
so I remember.
In Dallas?
Yeah.
Wow.
So if Grant says this, and I use this all the time and say, if you were to visit every new church each Sunday, it would take you 93 years to visit all of them.
Wow.
So that's very, very alarming to me because of other things that I could talk about in Dallas. But so yeah, I went through that. It was amazing to see the end result on October 20th and 21st. First time I've ever seen a event with Francis Chan, Ravi Zacharias, Tony Evans, Priscilla Shire. I mean, the names of all the shepherds that were speaking, as well as also we had Hillsong, we had 116 out there, we had Bethel, Jesus Culture. Like, this was amazing. Yeah. And the heart behind it was John 17:21, Father, let them be one as you and I are one, so that the world may know that you have sent me. And really, it was just about church. We're so divided. We're divided by denominations. We're divided by gender, races, cultures, everything. Like, what would it look like if we just came together to worship and uplift the name of Jesus? So that was a very awesome experience. And I guess I'll just kind of lead you to where I am now. So after I completed the project, it was a contract. So I said, Lord, I just pray that you would just show me the next step, just the next step, not everything. And he responded. So I had actually gone again to Mexico this time because there was actually a World Cup of amputee soccer going on. So this is 23 countries that show up, and we're in Mexico. I booked the flight before all that happened. God had spoken to me through this gentleman randomly at a 24-hour fitness in Carrollton.
Shout out 24.
24.
I heard they're closed, but yeah, shout out to them.
Most of them are closed, but
Yeah.
a few are open still. God bless. So I remember I went to to pick up a lens that I was going to rent, and then after that, I decided, hey, I'm just going to go to the Carrollton location. So that was the one closest to me. And then, always I just want to minister in the gym any way I can. So I was like, Lord, whatever you had for me, let your will be done. So worked out, nothing happens until I leave. And this is when it shook me, because this is like right before I have to go get on my flight. And this gentleman says, hey, did you break any weights over there? I'm like, nah, man. He was just kidding around. I was like, nah, but maybe next week I might not be so merciful. So we joked around, laughed, and I head out. And then right as I'm heading out the door, he's like, hey, man, God loves you. And I was like, thank you. Yeah, God loves you too. So this is when he's like saying, man, I feel like this is what the Lord has put on my heart to tell you. And he's like, I feel like you're going through a season of transition right now. And I feel like he's calling you to be a preacher of the world. And I've never had word of, wisdom or knowledge spoken onto me. So this is when I was just like, wow, God, what are you doing? And so fast forward, I land in Mexico. I'm The tournament's in San Juan de los Lagos. It's a small town of 60,000, but it's a very popular tourist area because it has the second largest cathedral over there in Mexico. So go to the tournament, and this is where God kind of just brings some revelation on like what those words were about, and really just let on my heart like maybe God is calling me to do this, but even more so to be the one that helped start the South and North Korean amputee soccer team because part of what was told to me is like, hey, I feel like God's calling you to go back home. And I'm like, I am home, but home as in South Korea. So that's where it really was just impressed on my heart because, just disabilities over there in every country or just in South Korea, it's really sad how they view the lame over there. And so how much big of a need it is. But even think about North Korea too. That's even worse. So yeah, after that whole ordeal, as I asked God for the next step, I get a call from Pulse and they say, hey, we want to bring you on for the 2020 team. And I was like, let's go. I'm pumped up. Like, thank you, Lord. And that's when after the whole tournament ended and I returned back home, there was a few months of just kind of like waiting to see what was next. I did get to partake in helping have a worship and revival night at UNT with Chris McCartney and Jesus Culture. So after that, I was told, hey, we need you up in Minneapolis for National Day of Prayer. So I went up there just anticipating like I'll be there to help out with the event. And then after that, wait for the next, call to go to DC. Well, I get up there, event's done, it was great. And then like, hey, we need you in DC.
Yeah.
So I barely packed not everything that I needed to move. And so, and mind you, I'm driving. So I'm going from Texas to Minneapolis all the way to DC.
That's insane.
So it was awesome, man, road tripping. And then after that, I'm there in DC. I'm actually in the DMV. So I was living in Maryland first. I was up in Burtonsville, Maryland. Then moved down to Alexandria, Virginia. And then the last place I stayed was in Oxon Hill, Maryland. So for the 10 months, I was just laboring for, Together 2020 to bring the churches again together for a gathering at the Lincoln Memorial. And this time it was a little bit different because we were going to have like a creative tent experience where we're going to have, just creatives for the kingdom go out into the world. And one of the people that I thought in mind actually was Montel Fish. I just loved his authenticity. I love how his transparency. I love, just the fact that he's okay with not being okay. People like him and many other creatives out there that are expanding the kingdom. I thought that this was a great way to really just reach this generation. It's through art, through music, through, creativity. And that's how you really speak to them, to think about people who are doing that for the kingdom, how awesome that would be. So yeah, we were very pumped up for what was to be. And then fast forward, we had COVID. COVID came.
Yeah.
And after COVID hit, we were kind of on a pause. We were just trying to see like what's next. What are we going to do for the churches and for the event? So we were kind of just in a standstill, just, following up, say, how are you doing? So we actually partnered up with One Heart DC to help bring some resources on Trello to like say, hey, like, do you need help with food? Do you need help with starting an online church? We're like, hey, we have all these resources that we want to help provide for you during this time, and we'll be praying for you. So after that took place, there was a lot of restrictions in DC, so they're under curfew. You can only do so much during that time. So that's when I was like, hey, I kind of want to go back to Texas. I want to be with my family to make sure that they're okay. They're immunocompromised. I don't want to go through, some of the horrible experiences I've been hearing about, especially like in New York with, the high rises of death over there.
Nursing homes, things like that. Yeah.
So like just to think like you can't see your family. That's kind of sad, So moved back, and then that's when things started to take a turn. The ministry was headed a different direction from this, and a lot of the resources to help create this event was starting to dwindle a little bit. So that's when necessary cuts were need to be made. And so I was one of them, and that's when I was just like, God, I don't know what's going to happen with me, but I trust you in this season no matter what. And so after that was taking place, God actually allowed me to use this time to really just start something new, which was my apparel brand, God Knows Apparel. And in it, we just through this time, I was able to just really just trust God even more, even when I'm jobless. Like, God is faithful. So that's when, I also had a word for this too, surprisingly enough. And it didn't make sense to me at first, but part of it was, hey, like, work is not for you right now. God wants you to start this apparel brand, and he's going to do that. And that's when I was like, doesn't make sense to me. I'm working right now. I'm pretty busy. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But that's when it led to this. So yeah, fast forward right now, that's where I trust in God, even regardless of what, the situation looks like. He's been so faithful, just like faithful. I think about, Hebrews 11. And, in that faithfulness, just think about Abraham, to think about Isaac, to think about Jacob, to Moses, to Noah, like God's faithfulness in all those circumstances where it didn't look like it was going to work out, but God did what he does. And so here I am now, kind of just like to update you guys on where I am. I'm still trusting in the Lord for provision, and he has provided me in so many great ways that I could not even imagine. So it's just a day by day experience for me, but just to kind of like redirect towards what we were talking about, if you have something that you want to talk about, discuss more, I just told my story in like, I don't know, 10 minutes or so, but I kind of would like to definitely discuss more about like the perspective of growing up as as an Asian. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you gave us a lot to kind of, take from.
Which is
I
good.
guess,
Which is good.
Yeah, no, which is great. I guess the first thing for me, coming from a similar background where, where so much is expected from you, the whole being a lawyer, doctor thing, I get all that all too well, right? Because that's, definitions of success, where we come from.
Yeah.
So, you obviously, we hear where your life is going and all these random moments of maybe working, maybe not working, and God, what am I going to do next? So from like your family background, you being the only child, and so your parents' eyes are kind of on you,
Exactly.
right, in terms of success and all that. So how do they feel about, what are those conversations like? When it's like, hey, I'm not working right now, but I'm going to go here in Haiti, I'm going to go here in all these different places. What are those conversations like?
Yeah, so I'll tell you this. That's a very good question, and that's where I wanted to redirect it towards, is that in the Asian culture, as well as many other cultures too, that may be able to relate with this, specifically, if you do not succeed, there's that dishonor to the family. South Korea was actually leading the world in suicides, and I just think about what kind of limit there is to an individual where success is not enough to the family, that dishonor truly leads them to make that decision to end their life. And part of my story is that I've always wanted to please people. I don't know if many people can relate to that.
Most people.
Yeah,
Can relate.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So so I've always wanted to please people, right? And at times that led to an identity crisis for me. There was a huge identity crisis that the Lord brought me out of, thank God. And in that was also success. I don't have that job, I don't make that income. I failed my parents, and that was a very, very tough season in my life, and it still is, because they care about me and they want the best for me. But sometimes, here in America, you take the unconventional route, and the Lord will provide. And you think about, just the conversations that I have are, hey, like, I want you to work here. You should work, apply for this job and do this and that. And, it definitely, there's the thought of that, like, hey, I'm looking out for you, son. Like, maybe you should, stop doing these, side gigs that, aren't going to really make that financial gain for you that's helpful. So So the conversations are very difficult when it comes to like, hey, like I've had enough of you doing this, like not being, employed. Maybe it's time for you to consider that. And so that's where, I have to take it up with the Lord. Like, God, are you telling me that, I need to go back into work again, or should I continue to trust in your provision and just be patient about this? And so, those are very tough conversations to be had. And I'll tell you this, that whenever the conversations do get a little bit more heated, there's often that sense of failure again that I always feel and put the pressure on, and it leads to just unnecessary words of like, hey, I'm a failure to you. Like, I'm better off in this world with, not being here because I'm a burden to you guys. So, yeah, for the longest time, until God brought me out of that identity crisis, it was very hard and difficult for me because obviously my parents' way of showing that they care and love may not look like that. And I perceive it the wrong way. And, that just leads me into like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. Like, I'm the only lineage of my family, so I need to continue it, make them proud. And if I don't do that, then, I failed. And so it's very tough. So being the only child, being a part of a culture that really just praises success, it's very difficult. So I've had, just a lot of hardships in that time. But, because my relationship with the Lord is where it is right now, like, even if I do feel like there is a sense of failure, like, I trust in God and I know He's not going to fail me. And so regardless of what the situation looks like at the time, whether it be unemployment or whether it be employment in a place maybe that my parents wouldn't think would be a great place to be in, God has me there for a reason. So,
And I just want to encourage you because I can relate to that. Also feel like, sharing because I went through, something similar where I lost my job back in May. And it was like months. I went about 5 months of just being at the house trying to figure out, right? You don't even want to talk to people anymore because people always want to know what you're doing for work. It's like, why? Like, they don't care about what you do, like how your life is going. Like, what do you do for work? And you don't even feel like you can really answer because you're like, man, I don't want to come off as a failure in people's eyes.
Yeah.
You're at a certain age and you're expecting, even for yourself and other people, family members, expect for you to be at a certain place. And yet you find yourself like jobless and you're like, man, what am I going to do?
right.
Right. And then, because I recently started doing Uber, and then I recently, as of a week ago, started working at a church.
Come on.
Right? Part-time.
Let's go.
Until hopefully next year transition to a full-time pastoral thing. I'm working with college ministry. But I remember yesterday, because I just got to be vulnerable, right? Since you were sharing, I remember yesterday, I was doing Uber. I was doing Uber Eats. It gives me a lot of flexibility to be able to balance the ministry, what I'm doing there. I was doing Uber Eats. I was going to deliver something at someone's house. And my shoes, I guess, they weren't tight or something. And so I stumbled and almost sprained my ankle.
Oh, man.
And then pride came out of me. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? Type of deal, right?
Wow.
And it was something where it caused me to belittle, the Uber thing, to where pride came up. It was like, I'm buried in this.
Yeah.
That type of thought kind of came up because then you start having that success, the thoughts about success, like I'm buried in this, I'm above this. But then as I was driving, I was reminded, no, that's like, think how grateful I had to be for the opportunity that God's given me to be able to do the ministry, right? In the level that I'm at right now. And then also have something that's so flexible that I can do both at the same time. So it's something where I just really had to repent, before the Lord, because it was something that I despised, right? Because I was like, man, in my heart or in my mind, it kind of seemed like, man, I should be above this type of deal, not knowing that, no.
Yeah.
Right? And it was really something where I really just had to repent, man. It was just the lies that try to creep up because you're trying to measure this weird success thing, right? And so, I could relate, 1,000% to what you're saying. And just, this was today where I was praying because that happened yesterday. So I was praying about that today and kind of hearing you share your story because we've talked about it.
Yeah.
And so really taking a step back and being grateful for the place where God has placed me presently, and similar to something that you said, knowing that I'm in God's will, even though I don't understand what's going on. And just that trust, man. I'm learning to trust like crazy right now, right? Because it's not always going to be like this, right? So it's teaching me how to trust, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, because it is an interesting dynamic as well, because like it is good to and obedient to honor your parents. And so whenever and I don't want to say like people that struggle with this have a skewed understanding or perspective of honor, but just exactly what you brought up with like feeling like you're dishonoring the family, dishonoring your parents, like I think that could come from like maybe a skewed perspective of success and only it being like one aspect, and the fact of like with the current financial situation or like whatever you want to call it, you know, at the same time you have a lot of other things that you're stewarding as well. You're stewarding friendships. You're still taking their thoughts into consideration and going to the feet of the Lord and asking like, hey, what do you want to do? And honoring your parents through going to the Father of asking, you know, what's going on, and not just sitting around like in apathy.
Right.
Because frankly, like a lot of people that do have jobs are probably more apathetic than some people who don't. And they're just kind of there, just wasting their day, getting by with as little as possible. To whereas those who like aren't employed at the moment or at some point in time, you know, they are out there, they are thinking about that. And that time that they have is then going into other things, whether it's their relationships with others, their relationship with the Lord, or as well trying to steward ideas that potentially the Father has given them well. Like whether that's with the clothing brand or whether that's simply you being able to come down here and care for your parents. Because like that's something that is a way of honoring them, is like, hey, I'm gonna not stay up in DC. Like I'm gonna come down here and help you, even if that means like that I might have to sacrifice my job in that instance. And so it's an interesting dynamic, and I would definitely encourage you that like, you know, financial success isn't the only way of success, or honoring what your parents have done for you up to this point in life. And it'll be interesting, because a thought that also came through my mind is like, you know, maybe this is just like a struggle of single men or women in their 20s or 30s that don't have kids yet. Because it's something where I'm sure a thought that's in the back of your parents, like our parents' mind, is like, hey, like, let's continue the family legacy. Like I did that for my parents in terms of like having you. And so from there, like, we just want you to continue on the family legacy and to be able to provide for your kids. And so it's an interesting balance of that, and kind of maybe point to get to, because maybe a thought that's going through the back of their mind is like, oh, you know, right now, maybe Alex or Chase or Josue just aren't in a position to be able to care for future kids. And so we want to kind of wake them up. But really the thing is like, we don't need to be woke up. It's just the season that we're in right now is not one that is conducive for kids, or maybe even marriage or relationships in general. And so from there, it's definitely interesting. And I would definitely encourage you that, you know, man, just continue to go, Lord, with this kind of stuff, because it's interesting, man. And especially in Asian contexts where, honoring your parents or your elders in respect and discipline is like such a key thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for first and foremost the encouraging words. I just really am grateful that, you know, there's people that come along the side of my life to just encourage you and remind you of that, right? Because if you're not in this situation, it's very difficult to understand. And you know, thankfully for your confession, which was super humble. I mean, you think about it, like, yeah, those thoughts do run into my head. You know, I'm like, God, like, I shouldn't be here. I should be doing this, and that. Like, imagine if I had, you know, $1 million, you know, all the good stuff that I could be doing for the kingdom. But then you think about, like, would you really, you know, God's preparing you in this season to, you know, be prepared for the next blessings that he has for you. And in that time, you just got to continue to grow in your faith, grow in your relationship with him, and just remain faithful. And man, that's just a very humble perspective to have, for you to even just think like, man, I shouldn't be doing this. Like I mean, I'm just very, encouraged by that story, really, just to say, like, God, I repent of that thought that I had, to say that I deserve better. Because why we all know at the end of the day, his mercies and grace are renewed.
No.
And truly, as we have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, we deserve not to be here. We should be dead. We should be in hell. But thank God for Jesus. And so, that's the perspective that I run from now, is that it's not about, where I would want, or where my parents would want me to be. It's truly where God wants me to be. And that's where you redefine the definition of success. It's not about monetary. I think really success to me, if you would ask me, is to really just do what God has called you to do, to follow the plans that he has established. And yeah.
Yeah, because that was a thought I just had, was maybe the focus in terms of, am I honoring my parents or not, shouldn't be focused on the outcome, but more so just if you're putting in the work. And that if it's something where you are, whether it's like looking for a job or are putting in work, and you are taking advantage to the fullest extent of what God's given you and what your parents have provided for you, then that's something where I don't want to say parents don't have space to kind of tell you that you're dishonoring them, but it's something that maybe at that point they aren't looking through it through the proper perspective. And so I know that telling a parent that in an Asian or African context, you don't do that.
No.
And so I don't know if there's some sort of way of encouraging them, just like, hey, like, I'm kind of doing this. So I don't know.
So go ahead. Go ahead, and then I was going to add on that.
With my parents, is mostly when you get married, you're successful, right? That's it for my parents. But what I was going to say, this is encouragement for everybody. I heard this pastor say that once. I was like, wow. If the world would have looked at Jesus on the cross, to them that's a failure, right? Because all of his disciples ran away from him. Like, from the world's perspective, all his disciples ran away from him. There he is, he's dying. It's a failure. But in God's eyes, that's what needed to happen, right? So even in the midst of things not looking ideal, according to what the world believes ideal should be, right? As long as you're doing what God is calling you to do, right? Joseph being in jail was a failure, according to the world standards, right? But according to God's purpose for his life, it's where he needed to be, right? So it's better for us as believers to, in those moments where, you might feel like you took a step back in life, whether it's work or whatever the situation might be, remembering that and saying, man, am I still where God wants me to be, even though I might have lost my job, might have lost this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's a big difference between what the world sees and what, where God has you. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm going to also say this. Remember, our parents, they grew up in a different generation. Society was a lot different. My mom always just like goes off the idea that, hey, I grew up without a college degree. I came here, left everything from my home country, and I have this job, and here I am. You should have no excuses, right? And that's right. Yeah, you shouldn't have any excuses. But also, when I got out of college and started applying and all that, it wasn't about your degree. They're looking for experience, right? So times are different, completely different. They thought that
you're 21, they want you to have 10 years of experience. You're like, huh? How?
So when you consider those factors, it's very challenging to change their mind, like to tell them, hey, like, I am doing this and that. And like the things that I'm doing, like that I find successful, they might not, because it's not something that is like a huge return of investment or whatnot. That's where it gets a little bit different, because, they're not used to what today's, society and age looks like. And, they're not immersed in the world as much as I am. And that's also another great thing that I get to do, is the ability to, just reach into relationships one-on-one. And there is just so much, like opportunities to share the gospel, to love on people. And so yeah, it may not be successful as far as like monetary gains, but I feel like that's, what God has called me to do, right? And doing that, doing the will of the Father, that's, what I just truly want to be doing.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's a difficult situation to be in when your parents don't understand that they grew up completely different.
Right.
And so that's just where, kind of just talking about that, what you were reaching upon. That's where I just wanted to just clarify that too, because it's very hard to convince your parents that way. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And so we're kind of talking about it here of just one aspect of whether it's Korean culture specifically, or maybe it applies to Japanese or like other Asian cultures as well, of, the pressures of being successful and being seen as honoring your parents and things like that. And so what are potentially some other things that Asian cultures can maybe learn from other cultures, whether it's American, whether it's Latin, European, African, whatever? And what are some things that you think the typical North American experience and culture can learn from Asian culture?
okay, yeah, that's a good question. So I think immediately off the bat, I could think about more of an open mind. I think that Asian cultures tend to think that this is the only way to success because they've done it traditionally for so long that this is the only way. But there's other pathways that you can take that can allow success to happen. So I think that that's one thing to really just touch upon. Also, just I think Korean cultures, like, or even just Asian cultures, they really just harbor on pride. Obviously, every culture loves to just like be able to brag on their children, right? But it seems like the Korean culture specifically likes to really just like be able to pride in their son, like, hey, yeah, so my son, he just got this job as a lawyer, he's gonna be doing this and that, like be able to brag about their children. And also like when things aren't going well, they kind of tend to hide and like avoid that conversation. And so it's just like that really just leaves it unhealthy. It's like it seems like my mom's waiting for the next conversation to have with their friends saying, hey, yeah, so he got this job. He's doing well right now. He just proposed. He's going to get married. Like, it's just like, I mean, of course we want to brag about our children, but also at the same time, it's just like, is that what you need to be doing? Is that honoring to God? I think more so if it was about a testimony, then yeah, but it seems like that's what Asian cultures do. As far as like North American culture, I think that respect, that's huge. That's super huge. That's something that Koreans really focus on a lot. And the way that you bow, the way that you speak, there's different ways to say certain things to either adults or just your friends casually. So respect is huge, that I feel like the American culture can really just learn from what they do. And also just like not only respect in regards to like human beings, but even just like belongings. Like, we love to litter and trash things a lot, but you go to Japan, or if you go to like Korea, you see how clean it is. They really just like,
I felt like China was like that.
yeah.
Even in Shanghai and Beijing, like the air is polluted, a little dirty, but that's just because of population. Everything else, especially like the gardens there and like old Shanghai, so clean.
Man, yeah. So I just love how they like respect that. And I wish I could see that more, because it's just like, that's why we can't have nice things. Like you go into a restroom, it's just like all trash. Like what the heck just happened there? It's just like, hey man.
I wanted to ask you guys, we're gonna come back to that. Do you guys remember when you were in school and like people would always write in the bathroom stalls?
Yeah.
Yes.
That was so why? But anyways, sorry. That was just I'm sorry guys, we'll edit that part out. It was a random thing that I was curious about. I actually do have a question. So earlier you brought up how you kind of went through your situation earlier with that kind of inspired you to be in law and all that fun stuff. And we kind of see everything that was going on in the country. We've had these conversations.
Yeah.
And I know one of the things we kind of wanted you to touch on for a little bit in terms of your perspective on the race conversation that we brought up, but from a Asian perspective, right? Because obviously, I feel like that has really been relegated between white and black,
Yeah.
and everybody else stay over there. So for you, like, what is that?
Yeah, because it's definitely something like, as you know, and as probably most of the listeners know, like that we just kind of finished up a panel conversation on that 2 weeks ago, something like that. And so, yeah, we spent a good amount of the time just kind of discussing, like Josue and I and some other friends, like our perspectives on the conversation and on issues that are being claimed and solutions that are being presented. And yeah, and it's something that you and I briefly talked about, Josue's party, and something where, yeah, some I think you correctly pointed out was like Asian folks like haven't really had a seat at the cultural table and things like that. And I know Upper Room, which I think very well has kind of brought out the illustration of a table to come out and have this conversation at and bring everyone to the table. And yeah, so really, I know you're not able to speak on behalf of all. I should say, we know you're not able to speak on behalf of all Asian people.
Yeah.
But so if you would just want to add kind of what you've heard from some of your Asian friends and then just your perspective, I think that'd be very valuable.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking me that. And boy, am I amped up to share you my experience. So man, so first and foremost, let me just kind of start with like where I began growing up. You hear about all this whole, sheltering to success thing, so people kind of get this perception like that Asians are always successful. They got their stuff together and, there's really hardly any issues that they face. But growing up, actually, man, I dealt with a lot of racism, a lot of name calling, a lot of stereotypes. Man, I always remember like people are like, oh, are you Bruce Lee's cousin, or like all these things like,
Oh no,
Bruce Lee to Jet Li, like to the Hoya, like just like those noises, like I
I
must
can
know
laugh,
kung
right?
fu.
It's okay for you to laugh.
I mean, it's funny
I'm gonna
because
laugh.
like,
That was funny. Okay.
so you get all these stereotypes like you must be into kung fu, you must be doing some sort of martial arts, or you must be super smart, like you're good at math. Like, man, honestly, I hated math. Like that was one of my least favorite subjects growing up in school. So just thinking about all the racism that I dealt with, and then also like the name calling. I remember in high school on the soccer team, I was like one of the only Asians. There was two other like Burmese guys, but I was the only other Asian on the team. And man, like majority of the soccer team was Hispanics. So they, obviously like the word Chino. So this is where the name Chino comes from me. It's usually to refer to most Asians now. Like it's not because they think that you're Chinese, but it's like the term is all for all Asians. So they're like, hey, Chino, like, man, open your eyes. Like they say all these like things that, at first, like maybe they're joking around, but it was actually they're being serious. And so I got picked on a lot. Actually, growing up, I got bullied a lot. I got picked on, especially for my size. I was very small as an Asian growing up. And so like being in sports, I was not inclined to like built for like football. I gave it my all in football, but then I realized quickly by my size that I was not capable of fulfilling a specific role for that. So that, and then joining soccer, that was something more that I could, give it a shot for. And man, that was like one of the most toughest times for me, just being called, a chink and all that. And so I remember I think one of the last racial incidents that really just blew me away by ignorance was I was on Fry Street going to Jimmy John's, and
Shout out to Fry Street.
Shout out to Fry.
Shout out to all the
Not very many good times.
not good times. During the daytime, it's clean, but during the nighttime, you better watch out.
Yeah.
So I remember just going in there, and this white guy, man, he kind of looked like a redneck. So I'm, there's my bias, right? So I don't know what was into him that day, but he looked at me and he's like, Chang Chong Chang. And I was like,
What?
and this is an elderly guy, probably in his 40s. And I'm just like, what was in you to make you want to say that to me, right? And so I was very shocked because like I never went through that kind of experience. So here's the deal. So for me, I think that with all that being said, there's certain things that, people believe that I couldn't do. And so very limited. And like, if you think about it right now, culturally, like, especially music, like Asians have a very hard time getting into like main acting roles or main like even just like with music, like rap, hip hop and rap. Like there's great, gifted, talented Asian artists I know out there, but they don't get the same attention that most, artists today do. So I feel like that was another thing too, is that you weren't capable of doing this or that. But going back into what we were speaking about, I just feel like when it comes to racism, I mean, you think about just like the Chinese that worked for the railroads, like you think about the Japanese in the internment camps. Like there was a lot of racism that went on there, but that was brushed away. And as you said, it's been back into the whole black and white conversation. Why? Because it goes, into slavery, it goes into the civil rights laws, and so like there's of course an intense history between then and that. But for me, yeah, man, I have so much to contribute. I felt like through my experience and how I overcame it, that it's very hard for me to be included in these conversations when it comes to racism, because at the end of the day, like when we peel our skins off, we're all skin, we're all bones, we're skeletons, and at the end of the day, we're one race, a human race. So it was very hard for me when I'm like invited to these like conferences and these events that are like all about racial reconciliation, and most of the time it's usually just like black and white, and I'm just like, man, like how long is this gonna go on for? Because like I felt like for my racism that I've grew up with, like I was able to overcome it, and most of the time the way that I overcame it was because I first started off like making people feel uncomfortable. So I'd joke around and be like, yeah, man, I love math. Let me pull out my calculator. Or, yeah, just like throw all these stereotypes in front of people's faces to let them know, like, hey, you can try to like joke around with me with that kind of stuff, but it's not gonna hurt me. It's not gonna offend me. And so like that's where I was able to really just be comfortable with that. Like you can do anything, you can say anything, but I've overcome this. I've accomplished this. So like you can't hurt me. But then also the most important thing is just knowing who I am and my identity as a child of God, right? So it's so hard for people to, I guess, like in a time such as this right now, to be able to accept that, because racism still does exist, and there's a lot of tension, and it definitely intensified during this time with Ahmaud Arbery, with Breonna Taylor, with George Floyd specifically, like it, and it still continues to go on, and it's as much as I love to see it stop, it as long as evil continues to exist in this world, it's going to happen. But yeah, I just with that kind of experience growing up, I don't know what to say about far as just like words of encouragement, but I've been able to really just overcome that through just these kind of experiences in life, and I really do hope that when it comes to these conversations of racism, racial reconciliation, that more races would be brought into the table, and also like there is a 31-day devotional that my friend Nico Peel wrote, and it really just focuses on just like the cleansing of the heart, biblical truth, and through that I got to share my experience and help contribute part of that devotional, and so I think that that's something that people can really just like get involved with, is just like learning about more cultures, and overcoming those stereotypes about these cultures. Actually go and ask a person from a different country, like, tell me about your culture, and immerse yourself into it, so that a way that this whole racism stuff like doesn't continue to drift onto the direction of a certain way, that you actually take the time to learn, and that's what I love about something that my mentor told me, was just like, hey, expand your world. And I was blessed enough to be able to travel to different countries and learn about their cultures, and so that really helped me to like destroying any negative stereotype that I had about them, and that's why, like, for me, like when it comes to racial issues, like I'm just like I just see the image of God right in front of me. Like I want to love on them, regardless of like what one bad apple from a specific, culture or race or organization or even religion, like Christians, for example, we tend to get, such bad press that we're bigots, we're racist, we're homophobics, but it was just one bad representation that led to people assume that that's the case, but that's not. And so I would say that's another thing to do, is to really expand your world, be able to travel. Like, I know right now you can't, it's really hard to at this time, but like, man, you think about, here in the United States, we're the largest melting pot. There's so much opportunities out there for us to go and learn. And so that's just kind of like where my take is right now with that issue. So
Yeah. And that's where I know that's where one of the big parts of our heart is providing these cultural experiences, whether it's through travel, through podcast, through cultural dinners that we can hopefully get started up here again soon.
let's go.
And yeah, that's how a lot of ignorance falls. And I know Andy Mineo's discussed on his podcast that he did for a little bit last year about stereotypes and how I still haven't found how to properly deal with them, because like there is to some extent, like, stereotypes are beneficial, but then there's a judgmental aspect to it, of which you see a lot, like in this racism conversation, whether it's being judgmental about someone's like race, or whether it's being judgmental about like calling someone racist without seeing facts or whatever. And so it's interesting, and still something that I'm trying to figure out. Is just like what is, because like just how do you deal with that in terms of stereotyping, and what is the best way to come about that? And it's super interesting, because I don't know if Nico brought this up in his devotional. I know it's an idea that me and Josue have talked about a good amount, and that I'm still trying to figure out how to properly handle, especially whenever it comes to engaging people outside the church with this conversation. But I know, like, at least for me, I think the one tool that at least us within the church hasn't properly dove into is the fact of, kind of as you alluded to, like, race not being a biblical concept, and it being something that, like, as we discussed, like, Plato created in 360 BC as a political construct, and that the Lord directly addresses in 1 Peter whenever he calls us like one race, a chosen nation, a royal priesthood, things like that. And it's something where, yes, like, race manifests itself in the world with how constructs are today. And for us to even be able, because I had this conversation with a mentor, is like, should we in the church even use the word race? But to even be able to engage with the world, like, yes, in a way we have to use their language, so we don't have to explain to them at all times like what race even is. But if we're doing family matters within the church, like, one of the fundamental ways for us to be able to progress in this topic is to understand that, like, race isn't even a thing. And Lisa Sharon Harper brings this up as like race isn't a thing, but we need to reclaim ethnicity. And the fact that not all black people are the same, and not all white people are the same, not Asian. No race is a monolith. And so I'll just say I definitely love that you brought that up, and it's something that I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to kind of go about that. And so, Joshua, do you have any thoughts to add before a question?
Yeah, no, I mean, I really love the points you kind of brought up about, even before we brought this up, how I know you had traveled so much, right? And I really feel like that really has informed a lot of your decisions and thought process, and just who you are as a person, and just how you're able to have a world view. So I mean, I thought that was a great answer.
Yeah,
being able to go into all these different cultures, serve them, learn, immerse yourself in them. Yeah, I think that's
grow your perspective.
Yeah, growing the perspective. Shout out to Perspectives podcast. But yeah, I mean, I think that's such a great thing.
Yeah. So I think the last question I have for you, which if you don't have an answer for it, that is okay, because I think it's a difficult question for us as Christians to wrestle with, is how do we properly and biblically, with a heart of reality and compassion, I guess would be a way to put it, approach this conversation if we think and or know that this problem of racism will not be solved in this world outside the scope of the church. Because we discussed this in Ephesians 2. We think it's proper to have the hope that racism will not be an issue and that reconciliation will happen within the church and within the body. We think that's a proper hope because of Jesus. But outside the world, even though it may be possible, I don't think it's a proper expectation for us to have. So how do we go into that conversation with hope or with practical wisdom if kind of in the end we think that this world in terms of the race conversation is just always going to be around?
Yeah, dang, that's a great question. I think that the first thing that came to mind for me was like, does God want us to do that? Like, are we called in this world that before you go to heaven, everyone in the church, we're gonna reconcile with racial tension here in this world? I asked that question first, but the hope is that God doesn't expect us to resolve that. He's the one that is going to use us as we're supposed to carry his heart. We hope that we carry his heart around, right? I think that's the most hopeful thing that we can expect, is that when we're going out in this world and you engage with an individual and a person, that you, as the salt and light of this world, you show who you are in Christ, right? And that's going to change everything. And so that's my, short-ended answer to that.
Yeah, because kind of how I've thought about it over the last few weeks, and as you brought it up, is kind of like, the ultimate hope we have is in Jesus, and that his word is true, and that we have salvation in him. And so even from there, if the hope that we have in these conversations with people outside the church isn't, it should be that they come to know Jesus and will be with us in heaven, not that we make this world perfect. And we do have a commandment and a responsibility to return shalom and God's order and peace while we're here. But at the same time, I don't think that should be a hope that we have. And it kind of seems like we all agree on that.
Yeah.
And so definitely appreciate your perspective on that, because it's something that we talked about a little bit, and I think that was super wise. But why are you into fashion, dude?
Oh, wow.
Here's the question.
Yeah,
waiting for.
Why? Because I'll just be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not really that fashionable of a guy.
Although he does dress pretty neatly, so I don't know.
I'll just say I'm very casual in what I dress.
There it goes.
I'm very sporty in what I wear.
Okay.
And so for me, I'm not in that world. So like, what is this fashion thing all about?
Yeah.
Why did the Lord call you to that? What does it mean to you? Whatever you want to say.
Okay. Yeah. So first and foremost, I think kind of like the root of it would be like, I've always wanted to please people, right? So I've always wanted to look good, build that image persona in front of people to look good. So I think that's where it kind of started, where the fashion taste began. And why I pursue it now is because if you think about fashion today, it really runs in every part of the world, like just in every, like, I guess like every field, like whether it be music, whether it be business, it runs everywhere, right? So one, it's a very untapped space in this world right now, as far as just like for Christians, because man, when I think about Christians, dude, like, because they don't put their money towards, that kind of sort of stuff, like, we might not have the best fashion taste, right? And so let's be honest, like I just love fashion because it's a great way to connect with people, especially in today's culture right now, where it's hypebeast culture, where it's sneaker culture, all this stuff. Like, it is the talk of the top, like it's a topic to talk about. And so like if you're not into that kind of stuff, you're kind of like, you're missing out. And so it's very hard to connect with people. So for me, like, I just love fashion because that's a great segue into conversation with people. It helps me meet a lot of people and have conversations with them and talk to them. And if they don't know Jesus, let's share about Jesus to them. So that's the main reason why I want to get into fashion, is because it really talks to them, and you see how much of an impact and influence that it can have. Far as just like when celebrities rock a certain shoe or rock a certain like wear, like people immediately want to just jump into it, and then there's influence into that. So like you think about, I think about people like I look up to like Jerry Lorenzo with Fear of God, and just the amount of influence that he has, because he's not just catering to Christians. He's actually catering to a completely different, sect of people. Like, and then you think about people like even Justin Bieber, who, has such great influence in his fashion too, but his music, obviously that's where it started off, but he also has the same influence with fashion too. So, I just love the fact that because of that, it's a great way to connect with people. And, as long as you're up to date about it, like for me, like I got to know what the latest fashion trends are. I got to know, to keep up to date with people and be able to conversate. Because then if it's not about fashion, then we can start talking about other things like music. I love music as well. And I grew up, playing the piano, the cello, the guitar. Like I got to learn all these great stuff. And so like because of, that, experience that I had with music, there's another way of connecting with people. Or I'm just trying other things too, like whether it be like health, whether it be, working out. Like I feel like the Lord has allowed me through my experience in life be able to like connect in different ways. If it's not even just fashion that we want to talk about, whether it be the movie culture, whether it be, food, like, so that's one great reason why that I pursue fashion and continue to do so. Cause like right now it's been a ministry for me to be able to like connect with people, especially what's hot right now and it's been hot, is the vintage culture. People are going back into vintage. They're like, there's kids like in high school that are like going to these thrift shops right now and trying to act like they know what vintage is, which is so crazy to me. So fashion has just been a great way for me to be able to connect and also hopefully one day influence, because the people that are in fashion, they have a great amount of resources and impact and influence. And just imagine these people who don't know Jesus, if they knew Jesus and how they would honor him with what they've been given, like how great would that be? So my hope is one day to be able to, get into those kind of relationships with influential like fashion designers. Like, I hope one day that God leads me to Jerry Lorenzo. One day he leads me to Kanye West. One day he leads me to Virgil Abloh and like all these other great people that are doing such huge projects and works that have such a huge impact in this world, and people just are like talking about it. So that's why I enjoy it, man. It's so fun. But also at the same time, it's not like that's where my hope and identity is, but it's very fun to be able to be in a place where you get to connect with people and get to know them, and just the stories that I can already just tell you about, like how God's been able to like help expand the kingdom because of that, is amazing. I feel like I would love to see more kingdom-minded people join alongside this journey of like, joining the fashion realm and really just like, pursuing the kingdom through what God has gifted them to and their calling to do so. Because, man, that world, that side of the world really needs Jesus and could benefit from that. So that's my reason for it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
2 questions. First question, can you give us a list of all the latest heat that's coming out, some shoes? And part number 2, how do you balance, being in a place where, being stylish and fashion and always having to look a certain way to where it becomes almost like idolatry, right? In the heart.
Yeah, man. So latest heat drops. I feel like
I'm putting you on the spot because
I feel like that should be a
I know you know
topic.
it, so I had to put you on the spot.
Man,
I know you know it.
Well, dude, I mean, just go get the sneakers app and you'll see. I mean, there's upcoming. We have, some Jordans dropping.
I know you guys heard. He said we have. Continue.
Sorry.
Representative of Nike and Adidas. Right?
Yes,
I love
Nike. If you are hearing this, please reach out to your boy.
Sign my boy. What's good?
No, so yeah, we got a lot of course, like heat dropping. One that I'm looking forward to, let's just say that, is the Nike Sakai Whopper Vapors coming out. vapor waffles.
Chase don't even know what those are.
No.
Oh no, dude.
They probably look ugly to some people,
Yeah.
but it's something that I've been looking at and looking at and looking at. It's just, it's just growing on me. So I'm really looking forward to that. It drops this Friday. Lord, please bless me on
Bless
that
us, Lord,
sneakers
please.
app. But anyhow, yeah, we got that. And I mean, we got some Yeezys coming out as well. And so that's the thing. So I think that when you hear that and segue into the next question is that how much of that is consuming my time, right? And there's got to be a fine balance of that, because if I'm just in like the latest trends or the latest heat coming up more than I am with my time with God, that's when you have made it an idol. That's simply put. And so that's where I'm just like, Lord, like, if you want me to pursue this drop, if you want me to pursue, this clothing, or just like if I'm going out vintage shopping, right? Then let it be so. If not, then I'm not going to. And I felt like even just like this week right now, like, I feel like, man, I don't think I should be pursuing this as much as I should be pursuing you. And so that's where I'm just like, God, I just want to redirect everything that I do to you. I want to glorify you. And regardless if I get the shoe or not, you're glorified, right? And so that's also something that you really just have to be careful with, because, when you get that W, right, you're like, oh man, I want the next W. I want the next W. I want that. And it gets addicting, because like, I'm not just getting these shoes to wear. Like, some of these shoes I'm actually reselling, because the market of there is so like, it's outrageous. Like, some of these shoes that the price that they go for, I mean, I can't believe that there are people out there willing to pay that much.
We can't talk about it on a Christian station. Yeah.
So it's just like, that's where the two and two go hand in hand. Like, I don't want to be, just so consumed in like, on YouTube, like learning about like from all these other, sneakerheads about like, hey, this is the drop, this is how you're going to get it. Like, I don't want to be consumed by that. I'd rather be consumed in the presence of the Lord more. And so that's just something that is a fight that you have to do. Sometimes when you're overcome by like the hype of like, oh shoot, this next drop, man, like if I can get this to rock it, or if I can get this to resell it, like that'd be great. But man, boy, do I want to be able to find a way to like not struggle with that. It's just like, well, okay, I didn't get it. All right, let's go to the next. Because there's always going to be drops.
Yeah.
The selling of shoes is never going to stop. So until we find a way to, I guess, find a solution to that. But I don't think we are. So, that's kind of just my answer to those two right now.
Yeah, and to your disbelief, I actually was a sneakerhead in college.
Oh,
so
this is news to me.
I had at least
Surprise.
25 pairs of Nikes and a couple pairs of Jordans on deck. And so it would be because it's funny, I'm playing this out. Basically, I would make sure to be able to get through at least half the semester, so that on each class, or actually each day that I was going to, whether it was like a Monday, Wednesday class, Tuesday, Thursday, that I didn't wear the same shoes to that class at least halfway through the semester.
Wow.
So
Sheesh, that's detailed.
All I thought you did was walk on the beach, so this is news to me. So I'm shocked.
I'll show you some pictures.
Okay.
I don't just take long walks on the beach.
Okay.
But to kind of start to wrap things up here, wanted to give you...
Before we do that, I want to make a very special person feel special. A person that knows obviously going to be listening to this.
Yes.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to give you this time to make the special person feel special. So go ahead.
Okay, so...
No question, just go ahead.
Just go ahead.
Go ahead. Tell us a little bit about the special person.
Yeah, so we're talking about you, right?
Not this time, next time, but the other special person.
Oh, okay. So my girlfriend, Monica, I am in a long distance relationship with Monica. We've been together for 19 months, and so she lives in Guatemala, and it was in January of 2019 that I got to meet her on the very last night. Actually, I was there. So crazy. But it happened through social media, and I saw that she knew Korean. So I was like, how does a Latina know Korean?
Yeah.
And so we started talking. I said, hey, how come I haven't met you before? Let's meet. And that's where the invitation came out, and she accepted. We had a long talk that night. We said, hey, these are the things that I value in life right now, especially with a relationship. So if you're willing to agree with these things, then I think that we can make it work. The rest is history. So the last time I got to see her was in January of 2020. And since then, things have changed. The borders closed, and then they opened up on the 18th of October. So right now, I'm praying that this pandemic doesn't get too severe, where I can just like go and visit and spend as much time with her as I can. But yeah, I mean, she is an incredible woman of God who just chases after his heart, so devoted. And, just the fact that she's so supportive of what I'm doing right now. That's one of the things that we can talk about later on in relationships. But it just seems like women these days kind of tend to like look for a specific Christian guy that can do this, and that, and provide and all that. And it's just like, you need to find a woman that will support you no matter what you're going through. That's the woman that you want to look for. And so, yeah, I honestly am blessed, and so grateful that God allowed her to choose me out of all the other guys that she could have chosen, and to be in a long distance relationship for this long. So we haven't seen each other for now 10 months. I mean, just think about the time that is, how much time that is. But yet, we're making it work only by the grace of God and His love, and so it's just a lot of FaceTiming on WhatsApp. Thank God for technology.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Like, thank God for technology. That's the way that God allows us to stay connected and build our affections and love for one another. So, Monica, I love you. I miss you. I need you. I kiss you. I'll see you soon, hopefully. That's what I say all the time.
Anything in Korean you want to say to her?
모니카, 나 너 너무 사랑하고 그걸 너무 보고 싶다. So I just said, I love you and I miss you a lot. So she actually, so random fact about her. So she actually, how she knows Korean is kind of wild. So she studied it. There's courses provided. She actually went overseas to Korea for 3 months and studied there. But get this is the caveat. So there's like this competition of 10 other Latin American countries that come together and do a Korean like speaking contest, like speech and everything. And so she ended up winning first place. No big deal.
That's so random, but yeah, that's cool.
Super random, right?
Huh.
So no big deal. So she's very like serious about that. And because of that, like, I'm just like, wow, like, she speaks Korean, English, and Spanish. Like, man, like you rarely find people that can speak a second language,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Right now, I'm just anticipating the time that God's gonna allow me to be able to visit her again, and thankfully, like, God's been able to like even bless me the opportunity to like hang out with her brother recently. So he's a professional pianist, and he's trying to pursue school here in Oklahoma, and it's called Wesleyan University. So he recently came to Dallas. I spent time with him, and then on his way back to Guatemala, I actually sent him some care packages to her. So like even things like that, God allows me to do. So can't wait to be able to see her in person. But yeah, man. I love you, Monica. So
good.
She'll appreciate that.
Obviously, you guys can't see, but he was blushing.
Oh, yeah.
He was turning red. As you can tell, the tone in his voice changed a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to give you the opportunity to earn some brownie points. So
Yeah.
you're
I
welcome,
appreciate
by the
that.
way.
No, thank you for the alley hoop.
Good friend for doing that.
The butter, man.
Just
That's
a
what
good
I
guy.
do, man.
Yeah.
Just a great
Just
guy.
dishing out
So
assists like
smooth.
Steph Curry over here.
That's what I do. But it's not about me.
How many
It's about the
assists is it
kingdom,
tonight?
man.
Oh my
How many
gosh.
assists do you have tonight?
At least 30. No,
At least
no,
more. I'm trying to be
at least
humble. I'm trying to be humble. So
Triple tonight.
that's all I do, man. That's
I
all I
love
do.
it. Well, so kind of wrapping things up here, I wanted to give you opportunity to share a little bit about apparel brand.
Yeah.
God knows, and just a little bit about the heart of it and where you hope to see the brand go and what you think the Lord can do through that.
Yeah. So I guess I already told you guys how it all started, that it was a word given to me, kind of just through a lot of experiences one at the upper room, and then after that, actually, it was all through the upper room.
Amen.
But praise God for that. And then it actually, even before that, people were just asking me because I guess of the, just the clothing that I was wearing. Like, hey, is that your apparel brand? Hey, is that your apparel brand? And actually, it was actually KB's. It was Native Supply. I was like, so shout out to Native Supply.
Yeah.
That's where I really got influenced by their style, actually, because as a Christian apparel brand, a lot of them miss the mark. They're too like out there or too just like
Jesus.
yeah, y'all need Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like when you see HGA, you're like, what's HGA? And it's like, oh, okay, I could talk to you about that. So there's conversations that are to be had when you have to ask them, and then but also at the same time, it's like, wow, that's very stylish. I love it. So it birthed from that, and then finally I was like, God, like you must be calling me to do something about this because like I have way too many people ask me about an apparel brand. I don't have one. So one night I was just praying. I was just like, Lord, if God knows apparel on Instagram, on website, like if none of that and even email is not taken, then this is what it's going to be called, and I'm going to pursue it. And so when when I found out that none of those were taken, I was like, all right, I'm going after it. And it was just like a thought, an idea, and then finally, like while I was in Virginia, I decided, hey, I'm just gonna. Actually, this is the first print, so it was cold over there at the time. So I just printed this out and just went to a store, and then after that, just started rocking. And I was just like, what, I'm gonna test the waters and see what people think about it. And so eventually, the demand grew, and also the need for action was necessary. So during the summer, I decided, hey, I'm going to release a small, limited amount of shirts, and by the grace of God, by his care and love and provision, like it sold out, and I learned so much through that experience. But the heart behind God Knows Apparel is to reach through clothing, is to help people, remind them through Psalm 139 that no matter what you're going through or what you're dealing with, God knows and he cares about you. So we seek to make an impact through clothing and remind people of that. And the vision and the heart behind this is huge, I feel. But all things are possible through Christ who strengthens you. So my hope is that this is a way to especially like reach the lost, is to be a conversation starter. What does God know? Like what's that mean? And after that, I really want to just hope that it helps to eliminate people going through addiction, going through identity crisis, or going through suicidal thoughts, or actions of suicide, wanting to commit suicide. I want to help people know that God is real, that he does love and care about you no matter what you're going through. And then also with that, my vision too is to help a lot of ministries out there that are tackling some of the issues that are going on in this world that I'm so passionate about. So one, about Operation Go Quickly, and helping reach out for the disabled. And that's really where it started off. I was just like, I want to help this ministry expand and provide resources. So my idea is to help every single year a different ministry that I'm very passionate about. So I know that God's kingdom will continue to expand in the work that they do. So human trafficking, that's another huge issue that I am really passionate about. So there are some ministries out there in mind that I think of, that I want to support what they're doing. When it comes to homelessness, I think about, West End Church and what they've been doing. I love what they're doing and want to continue to support what they are doing to help the homeless out there, especially at a time such as this, because, the church has not been meeting. So since they've not been meeting, they haven't really been going out. But then there's, of course, people like you that, have that heart to, care about the lost, the poor, the lame, the sick. And so I want to continue to support ministries out there that are just actively pursuing God's heart and helping people. So that's my vision, is that my apparel brand not just, is about clothing, but it's also about reaching the lost.
Yeah. Love it. You have any last comments you want to share?
Man, we went all over the place.
Yeah, we did.
And it was great.
I hope so.
Episode 1, season 2, We brought a legend on for you guys. and I hope that I took a lot away from this. And I think I said this at a recap. One of the amazing thing about the podcast is you learn new things about your friends.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know Chase wore shoes. Like, this is news to me.
Right.
I'm just giving him a hard time. It's my guy. But man, I mean, it was such a pleasure to have you on and just,
Thank you.
to speak so boldly and to share your story. And being so vulnerable and just letting us in everything that God is doing in your life.
Yeah.
All the struggles, all the ups, all the downs. I feel like a lot of people can relate to everything that you were saying, whether they're of the Asian culture or not, right? I'm from the Congo and I'm relating to everything that you're saying, right? And that's just kind of how it is. And I appreciate and I value your friendship, man. So whenever I knew you were going to come on with us, I was just excited. And you're a creative. And my guy has blessed me so much, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you that know, you know. But man, it was such an honor to actually sit down and have you part of the podcast. And man, exciting.
Yeah. And we're excited to see how God continues to bless you through your obedience and just fruitfulness in the future. And it's going to be good, man. Like, his plans are good. Yeah. And you have a pure and obedient heart for what he's doing. And for you and Monica as well, for whatever the future has in store with that, whether that's here, whether that's Guatemala, whether that's Korea, wherever. But yeah, man. You have any last things you want to share?
Yeah. Geez, I think that everything that you spoke on to me, especially just like the vulnerability, I just want to see a world that is okay, not being okay. Of course, like, you're not going to share every single detail to everybody, but like, I mean, just imagine if the world had such empathy and such compassion towards people that are struggling and can relate, and not judge them based off of that, right? And carry the love and the heart of God towards those people that are going through that. So like, for me, man, like, you know, if you ask me, I'll be an open book, right? But, you know, I wish that, especially at a time such as this, that we would be more intentional about reaching out to friends, family members, like, and asking them what they're going through. And that also people would, you know, have the opportunity to know what it's like to be vulnerable and see healing. Because you know what they say in James, you know, confess your sins unto another so that you may be healed. And so I really hope that this world can move towards seeing more openness, because you just think about at a time like this where suicides have been the highest, you know, just substance dependency is just increasing ever so more. And if they would just see the eternal peace and love and joy that comes from God, and the healing that can happen from him, then what a great, you know, just like shift that we can see, especially in a time that we're dealing with. So that's what I just want to leave with you guys, and hope to encourage more people to be doing, is just to be more open and vulnerable with someone that you can truly trust. Yeah, hopefully we'll see something change from that. And also, you know, because of what we're dealing with, far as like what we dealt with with the elections and whatnot, I think that another thing that is important on top of that is the listening aspect, because now we're in a world where if you and I don't agree with a certain thing, it's immediately, I cut you off out of my life, I unfriend you, unfollow you, I block you. But I want to see people be more slow to speak, slow to anger, and listen. Because, you know, I came back from D.C. On Thursday night. I went to the White House, and what I got to witness was so crazy. I literally saw the anti-Trump protesters in front of the White House, and across the street from them were these Jesus people. And so literally, like, there was a clash between heaven and hell, what it looked like. And I just went there undercover, didn't, you know, announce that I was a Christian. I just went and just wanted to witness like what was happening. And man, the things that I saw opened my eyes tremendously. Like, I see one, that this nation, or most people, are without hope. And if they are with hope, their hope is in, hey, we're going to put Trump out of office, or hey, we're going to try to enforce the, you know, ideals that we think that would help, you know, make this world a better place. But they don't put their hope in Jesus. Mm-hmm. And so when you take that time to listen instead of shoving something into their face or down their throat, you begin to realize like what they're dealing with. And then after that, I think that's when you can present something that is so eternal and so just so valuable that it's irreplaceable. So take the time to listen. I hope that I encourage people to actually be able to talk to one another without arguing. If you don't agree, fine, that's okay. But things shouldn't change dramatically because of one thing that you disagree with.
Yeah, love that. I think that's a great ending message. And yeah, man, as Josue said, really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah.
Come over here and join us, sit down with us a little bit, have a good conversation. It was a lot of fun. And again, we're excited to see just what God has in store for you in the future. So thank y'all for tuning in. Really appreciate y'all listening. We'll link all of Alex and God Knows Apparel's information in the description. If you want to go check them out, give them a follow, support them, support him as well. All the information for Perspectives is going to be in the description below. If you want to support us and any of the outreaches, any of the programs that we're doing, as well as if you want to support the podcast. And as we're going into year 2, kind of kick it up a notch, we can see. So it'll be good. But yeah, again, Alex, thank you for coming out, man. And until next time, much love and God bless.